The city was quiet that night, wrapped in a blanket of stars that seemed closer than ever, as though they had descended to listen to the whispers of hearts beating restlessly beneath them. The streets shimmered faintly with the silver glow of the moon, and the breeze carried a kind of hushed secret that belonged only to midnight. On the rooftop of an old, ivy-covered building stood Emma, her gaze fixed on the endless sky. She had always found comfort in the silence of nights, in the way darkness didn't hide her but embraced her with gentleness, as though it understood the weight she carried in her chest. That night, however, something felt different. Her heart raced with an anticipation she could not explain, as if destiny itself was about to speak to her through the air, through the quiet, through the presence of someone who was yet to arrive. She wrapped her arms around herself, not from the chill of the night but from the sudden fluttering of emotions she had no control over. And then, as if summoned by the pull of her unspoken longing, he appeared. Liam, tall, thoughtful, with eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them, stepped onto the rooftop. His footsteps were soft, yet Emma heard them as though they were the loudest sound in the world, because her soul had been waiting for them. He offered her a smile, a small, hesitant curve of his lips that carried more meaning than words ever could. For a long moment, they simply looked at one another, and in that gaze, the world seemed to dissolve, leaving only two hearts trembling in recognition. Neither of them spoke at first, but silence was not empty between them, it was alive, filled with the possibility of everything they had not yet said. The night watched over them, patient and knowing, as if it had seen this scene written long before they were born. When Emma finally found her voice, it was soft and uncertain, but it carried the honesty of her soul. "I didn't know if you would come." Liam's reply was equally tender, a whisper that drifted across the rooftop like a confession meant only for her. "I couldn't stay away." And in that fragile moment, beneath the witness of the stars, the story of their midnight love began not with grand declarations, but with the quiet power of presence, of being there, of daring to let silence speak louder than words ever could. Emma and Liam stood side by side, and though they were only a breath apart, the space between them pulsed with an unspoken electricity, as if the night itself was holding its breath, waiting for what they might reveal. Emma glanced at him, noticing the way the silver light played across his features, softening the sharpness of his jaw and highlighting the quiet strength in his eyes. There was a tiredness in him, too, a kind of hidden ache that mirrored her own, and in recognizing it she felt less alone, as though fate had stitched together two broken pieces to make something whole. Liam leaned against the old railing, his hands brushing against the rusted iron, and he let out a slow breath, the kind that carries years of unspoken truths. "I used to come here alone," he said finally, his voice low and thoughtful, when the noise of the world became too heavy. Somehow the night always listened. Emma smiled faintly, the corner of her lips curving upward with a mix of sorrow and tenderness. "I know what you mean. I've always felt that midnight is the hour when secrets stop being secrets, when the heart refuses to stay silent any longer." Her words lingered between them, delicate as threads of smoke, and Liam turned to her with a look that seemed to search deeper than she had ever allowed anyone to go. The air shifted then, filled with a quiet intensity that neither of them could ignore. He took a small step closer, not closing the distance completely but enough to let her feel the warmth of his presence. Emma's pulse quickened, not out of fear but from the sheer vulnerability of being seen so clearly. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything she had buried inside, the loneliness, the longing, the countless nights spent staring at the stars and wishing for someone who could understand the silence in her soul, but the words caught in her throat. It was Liam who broke the stillness, his voice trembling slightly, as though he too was bearing a truth he had long kept hidden. "Do you ever feel," he asked, eyes fixed on hers, "that some connections aren't made by choice, but by something greater? That no matter how far we run, we are pulled back to the same place, the same person, as if the universe itself refuses to let us drift apart?" Emma felt her breath hitch, because in his question she heard her own thoughts reflected back at her. It was as if he had opened a door she had always been afraid to touch, yet had always longed to step through. The rooftop wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of rain, and for a fleeting second, the world around them seemed to bend, to hold its focus entirely on the fragile thread tying them together. Emma's voice, when it finally emerged, was soft but certain. "I think some souls are written in the stars long before they meet on Earth." Liam's expression shifted, softening with a mixture of relief and wonder, as though her words had confirmed something he had secretly believed but never dared to admit. In that instant, their midnight talk was no longer about the surface of things. It had become a journey into the very heart of who they were, a place where fear and truth danced together, daring them to step closer, daring them to trust the gravity that had pulled them to this moment. And as the clock ticked past another minute into the endless night, Emma realized that she wasn't just standing on a rooftop anymore, she was standing at the edge of something vast, something dangerous, and something achingly beautiful. The night deepened around them, as if the stars themselves leaned closer to listen, and Emma felt the weight of the moment pressing gently upon her heart. The rooftop no longer seemed like a physical place but rather a suspended world, a fragile dimension made of moonlight, silence, and two souls daring to touch the edges of each other's truths. Liam's eyes never wavered from hers, and in them she saw both the storm and the calm, restless questions that longed for answers and a quiet tenderness that offered comfort without demand. She took a slow breath, steadying herself, because she knew that if she spoke now, it would not be with rehearsed words or polite conversation, it would be with the unfiltered honesty of her soul. "I've always been afraid of nights like this," she admitted softly, her voice trembling like a candle's flame in the wind. "Because when the world is silent, I can hear my own heart too clearly. And sometimes, it hurts to listen." Liam tilted his head, his expression gentle, carrying no judgment, only understanding. "Maybe the heart hurts," he said carefully, "because it's been holding too much inside. Maybe it's waiting for someone to share the weight." Emma felt the sting of tears behind her eyes, but they didn't fall. Instead, they hovered, shimmering with the same vulnerability that filled her chest. She turned slightly away, gazing at the horizon where the city lights flickered faintly beneath the wide sky. "I've always wanted that," she confessed, her voice so low it nearly disappeared into the night air. "Someone who doesn't need me to pretend. Someone who sees the cracks and doesn't walk away." Her confession lingered like a fragile note of music, and she feared the silence that followed, the possibility that her words might echo unanswered. But then Liam's voice came, quiet yet steady, carrying a depth that startled her. "Emma," he said, her name shaped with such care it felt like a promise, "you don't have to pretend with me. I've seen the cracks, and they don't scare me. They make you real." She turned back toward him, and in that instant, their eyes met again, locking in a gaze so raw that it felt like their souls were speaking in a language older than words. The rooftop wind stirred around them, lifting strands of her hair, brushing against his jacket, as though the universe itself wanted to join in their fragile conversation. For the first time in years, Emma felt herself exhale a weight she hadn't realized she had been carrying. The walls she had built around her heart, brick by brick, out of fear, out of loneliness, seemed to tremble in his presence, ready to fall with the gentlest of touches. Liam stepped closer, the space between them shrinking until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, steady and grounding. His hand twitched slightly, as though he longed to reach for her but held himself back, respecting the delicate line between longing and intrusion. That restraint alone made her heart ache with a strange kind of safety, the assurance that he was not here to take but to be, not to demand but to understand. "Do you know what I think?" Liam murmured after a long pause, his eyes soft yet searching. "I think midnight gives us courage. Because when the world sleeps, the truth finally wakes." Emma felt her lips part, the corners lifting into a small, fragile smile that carried both sorrow and hope. "Then maybe," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and daring, "this is the night I stop hiding." And as those words slipped into the air, Emma felt something shift inside her, a quiet breaking, a quiet healing, like the first crack of dawn appearing on the edge of a long, endless night. The silence that followed Emma's words was not empty, it was alive, trembling with the rawness of what had just been revealed. Liam's gaze softened even more, as though he had been waiting for that very moment, waiting for her to take down the walls she had built so carefully around her heart. He stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking to almost nothing, and this time he did not stop himself. Slowly, with a gentleness that carried more reverence than hesitation, he lifted his hand and let his fingertips brush against hers. The touch was so light, so fleeting, yet it ignited something vast and uncontainable inside both of them, a spark that neither had the power nor the will to extinguish. Emma drew in a sharp breath, her heart pounding, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she allowed herself to feel the truth of that moment, the warmth of his skin against hers, the steady rhythm of his presence, the unspoken promise that perhaps she was no longer alone in her fears. The stars above seemed to burn brighter, and the rooftop air thickened with the gravity of emotions that could no longer be ignored. "You make it sound so easy," she whispered, her voice breaking just slightly, as though each word carried the weight of years. "To let go, to stop hiding. But what if I'm not enough? What if you see me fully, and it isn't what you thought?" Her confession spilled out like a secret too heavy to carry any longer, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Liam's fingers tightened around hers, not with force but with quiet conviction, anchoring her in place. "Emma," he murmured, his tone low but unshakable, "I don't want the perfect version of you. I want the real you. The scars, the fears, the dreams, the silence, everything. That's the person I came here for tonight." His words struck her like an arrow, but instead of wounding, they healed. The part of her that had always feared rejection, the part that had convinced itself that love required flawless masks, slowly began to crumble in the face of his unwavering sincerity. For the first time, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe she was worthy of being seen, fully, completely, without disguise. Her tears finally fell, not out of sorrow but release, and Liam's thumb brushed them away with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "You've carried so much alone," he said softly, his own eyes glimmering with vulnerability. "But you don't have to anymore. Not with me." The night seemed to exhale around them, as if the universe itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment of surrender. Emma's chest rose and fell with the rhythm of her emotions, and she realized that every midnight she had ever spent in loneliness had been leading to this fragile, beautiful collision of two souls who dared to speak in the language of truth. She leaned closer, drawn to him not just by longing but by a pull deeper than desire, a pull written in the stars. Their foreheads touched lightly, a delicate meeting of skin that felt more intimate than any kiss, as if their souls were bowing to each other in quiet reverence. The world beyond the rooftop disappeared, the streets, the noise, the years of solitude, all that remained was this sacred stillness, this moment suspended between fear and love. "Do you believe," Emma whispered, her breath mingling with his, "that some people are destined to find each other, no matter how many times they break, no matter how far they wander?" Liam's reply was almost a vow, steady and certain. "I don't just believe it. I know it. Because I found you." And with those words, the last barrier within her finally shattered. Emma closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she let someone see her completely. The air between them was fragile, trembling with the weight of everything that had been confessed, yet it was also alive with a new kind of strength, a bond that no silence could break. Emma kept her eyes closed for a moment longer, feeling the steady warmth of Liam's forehead resting against hers, the quiet rhythm of his breath mingling with her own, and in that closeness she realized something profound. This was what safety felt like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of someone willing to hold her even when the fear remained. When she opened her eyes, she found his gaze waiting for her, steady and unflinching, and for the first time in years she did not look away. "Liam," she whispered, her voice soft but resolute, "if I let you in, promise me you won't run." He smiled, a tender, almost broken smile that carried the weight of his own past wounds, and yet it shone with undeniable certainty. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. "I've been running all my life, Emma, but I don't want to run anymore. Not from you." The words wrapped around her heart like a vow, and she felt the last of her defenses melt away, leaving only truth, only longing, only love. Slowly, as if guided by the very stars above them, Liam closed the final inch of distance and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was not rushed, not fiery with desperation, but slow, reverent, and achingly tender, like the first rays of dawn breaking after a long, endless night. It was a promise written in touch, in breath, in the unspoken language of two souls that had finally found home in each other. Emma's hands lifted, trembling, and came to rest against his chest, where she could feel the steady beat of his heart echoing her own. For a long, timeless moment, nothing else existed, no past, no fear, no future, just the sacred stillness of two people daring to love beneath the witness of midnight. When they finally parted, their foreheads still touching, Emma let out a shaky laugh that carried both relief and wonder. "It feels like I've been waiting for this my whole life," she admitted. Liam brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle, almost reverent. "Maybe you were," he murmured. "Maybe we both were. Maybe every lonely night, every unanswered question, every piece of pain, maybe it was all leading us here." His words settled into her soul like a truth she had always known but never dared to believe, and for the first time, Emma did not feel like a broken puzzle searching for missing pieces. She felt whole. The night stretched on, and the city below continued in its oblivious rhythm, but up on the rooftop, time seemed to bend around them, giving them the gift of forever in a single hour. They talked more, softly, honestly, sharing dreams and fears, speaking of futures they had never voiced aloud, because now they could imagine them together. Each word was a thread weaving their souls closer, binding them not with chains but with choice, with tenderness, with love. And when the first blush of dawn began to paint the horizon with hues of rose and gold, Emma leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder, and whispered the truth she had kept hidden for so long: "I'm not afraid anymore." Liam's arm wrapped around her, steady and sure, his voice low but certain. "That's because you don't have to be. Not as long as we're together." And with the sunrise crowning the city, their midnight love talk transformed into something eternal, a promise that even when nights grew dark again, they would no longer face them alone.